this episode of the Daily Gaelic Podcast, I come to you with a theme. And that theme is dogs, or more broadly, canine domestication. Because you see, a friend of mine brought a news story to my attention that was just too dang cool not to share. And it reminded me of several other really cool things I've heard about recently. So there was a news story from this past week about an archaeological discovery in Spain. They found 5,000-year-old skeletons of foxes alongside dogs, which were buried in these, silos, whatever that really means. I didn't quite understand. And they were able to determine that, like dogs, the foxes that were buried here were likely eating the exact same food as the humans they were living with. Interesting. But more curious still, one of these foxes was found to have a healed fracture in one of its legs that shows signs of being immobilized by humans. Now, this isn't exactly conclusive, and we can't really say too much about these foxes and how they would have behaved relative to modern foxes we know of today, but it strongly suggests that at one point in human history, humans made an attempt at domesticating foxes alongside dogs. Now, if we continue this theme and move down under, we can consider the dingo. Now, up until a couple weeks ago, I was under the impression that dingoes were like wolves or African wild dogs. That is, some member of the canine family that had, over thousands of years, moved its way to somewhere on the planet and had begun to, through evolution, adapt to its surroundings and become a unique animal. Turns out this isn't exactly true. And I don't think anyone told me this directly. It's just one of these things that you link together in your brain, and it goes unchecked for years until you finally find out that that thing you just kind of believed is not true at all. So as it turns out, dingoes have only been in Australia for about 5,000 years. And that's because Indigenous Australians, that are the people who were living in Australia well before Europeans settled there, brought dogs with them. And it seems as though some of those dogs broke away from the people and became feral. And the descendants of those 5,000-year-old feral dogs are today's modern dingo. So they aren't some ancient canine species that's been in Australia as long as kangaroos or something. They came along with people. That's so cool. And fun fact, as we're talking about dogs and Australia, there was a group of people in Australia, the Babaram people, who still live. They still make up part of the Australian population, though their language has sadly gone extinct. But were you to ask these people, a couple hundred years ago when there were still speakers of their language, what you call a dog in their language, they would have told you dog. Not because they borrowed the word from English, not because their language and English are in any way related, but because of pure dang random chance. Their word for dog and our word for dog sound basically exactly the same. And for our final story for today's podcast, I have one more example of dogs in prehistory. Now, I don't know if you knew this, but early humans brought dogs with them just about everywhere they went. And we have extensive records of dogs in the Americas, well before Europeans arrived. And it seems as though the people that crossed into the Americas through Alaska from Asia thousands of years ago brought dogs with them and lived alongside them just like we live with dogs today. Keep them as pets, sometimes give them jobs to do, and just generally love our furry dog friends. And though they've changed over time, DNA evidence strongly suggests that those dogs that were living in the Americas thousands and thousands of years ago can trace their lineage back to the same dogs that started out in Eurasia, which was likely the first place where dogs were domesticated. And fun fact, a lot of the native tribes where I grew up, in far western Washington, who are collectively referred to as the Coast Salish people, bred certain dogs specifically for their fur, just like sheep. They were known as the Salish Wool Dog, and they were selectively bred to grow this long fur, which they would then shear once a year, and they could make into blankets and other items of ceremonial importance. It was seen as something more valuable than like other animal fur they might have used to make textiles. So yeah, dogs. They've been with us for tens of thousands of years. They've come with us all across the planet, and they're just great.